Oh no, the Fantastic Four are too white! Except, maybe, this guy? For months, there were rumbles and rumors behind the scenes that Kevin Feige, head honcho at Marvel, insisted that the Fantastic Four cannot be all white. Is that true? Does it matter? Are you not going to see this movie because we haven't got the diversity that you were expecting?
I'm Antony Aris-Osula and you're watching The Right Tone. So, straight into it. So the main issue about the Fantastic Four movie doesn't seem to be, are they finally going to get the movie right? Are they finally going to make Mr. Fantastic stretch believably? Are they finally going to make The Rock look anything but like Play-Doh? Are they going to cast a believable Invisible Girl? And how are they going to top Chris Evans as Johnny Storm the Human Torch? No. The questions are nothing like that. The main question has been, is this going to be a all-white Fantastic Four, or are they going to change the races? And for someone like me, who's been a lifelong, well, my life's not over yet, but since childhood fan of the Fantastic Four, yeah, I love the X-Men, particularly Wolverine. I think was every 80s comic book fan's favourite. But I always had a soft spot for the FF. I remember the cartoon when I was very small. Both the 60s one with the original Fab Four and the 70s one, Hanna-Barbera, that swapped out the Human Torch for Herbie the Robot, apparently due to copyright issues because they were going to make a Human Torch TV show or film or something. And I remember just being in love with the characters. I loved the Thing, just being the grouchy curmudgeon that he was, Orange Rock Man. What's not to love? I loved Mr. Fantastic. I always used to get him confused with Plastic Man from DC when the cartoons were on at a similar time. And yeah, Sue was great, and Johnny the Human Torch, a guy on fire flying. What more could you ask for? What I wasn't asking for when I was imagining these characters I've loved since I was a child being turned into live action was, can we not make them white? Could we have a Black Reed, an Indian Sue, a Chinese Johnny, whatever the Thing would look like, because he's orange anyway? That was not the question in my mind. I didn't care about the ethnicity of my favourite superheroes. I would have taken them exactly how they've always been portrayed in comics and in animation. So why is this question of what ethnicity the Fantastic Four or any Marvel Comics adaptation now in 2024, why is that such a huge issue? Why is it such a huge question? Well, they've cast a Fantastic Four now. Yay! What do you think? I actually like this cast. I really like Vanesa Kirby as the Invisible Girl. I thought she's been great in the Mission Impossible series. I didn't really see her in The Crown, but apparently she's great. I haven't seen Joseph Quinn in Stranger Things, because I haven't quite got up to that season yet. And he's really good. My kids say he's really good. I think he looks the part of some young guy who might be a little bit of a chip on his shoulder, like Johnny needs to be, starting out anyway. I've only seen Ebon Moss Bachrach in one thing, and that was Andor. But I thought he was great in that. Apparently the Bear is a breakout role for him, and he's really, really good in that. I didn't see Punisher either, because I loved the Punisher in the Daredevil series, but I don't really do hardcore violence. I find it a little bit squeamish, so I think I gave the Punisher show a little bit of a wide berth, but apparently he's in that. But he's really good, apparently, in The Bear. So, at least optically, he's Jewish, and the Thing, Ben Grimm, was always Jewish, according to the comics. And then you have Pedro Pascal, Mr. Fantastic, Reed Richards. Now, I'm going to go against the choir of online noise, I was going to say fans, but who hate the casting of Pedro Pascal, not because they don't think he's a fantastic actor. I think he's a fantastic actor. Not because maybe he's politics. He's very radical with his politics, which I can take or leave. I'm not interested in that. Just act on screen and be the character. But apparently he doesn't look like Reed. Now, John Campion put a picture out of different iterations of Reed Richards from the comics. And I thought, bravo, sir, bravo. You've hit the nail on the head. Which Reed? I've never been a fan of the egghead kind of very strong, elongated version of Reed in the more recent adaptations, or the one in the 90s, and then obviously now the more recent iterations, he's got the beard and stuff like that. I quite like the Jack Kirby drawn classic Reed, and when you look at that Reed, except for issue number 1 where he was a little bit of an egghead, he was drawn quite heroically, quite the masculine square-jawed lead in those early 60s issues, with just obviously the white wisp of hair. And you've seen the different images, and I think that Pedro Pascal actually, if you give him the right haircut and make sure he has those white temples, he would actually look the part. Now, I could care less for the mustache. Shave off the tash, give him a bit of a haircut, make sure he's got the grey temples, and there you've got your Reed Richards. I'll be happy with that. Now, the fact that he is Hispanic, he is Latinx, Hispanic, he's Latino, that's a win for Marvel, Disney, I guess, because it ticks the diversity box. But with all due respect, optically at least, he looks white. Now, don't flame me. I'm not disputing he's Latin heritage. I know he's from Chile, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. But if I didn't know his background and I looked at him in The Mandalorian, like where you briefly see his face a couple of times, once a season, I'd think it's a white dude. Sorry. And nothing wrong with that. So if that's Marvel forcing the diversity into this adaptation, you've got a Jewish actor and the character's Jewish, check. And you've got an Hispanic actor in the lead role, or one of the major leads, check. He looks like Pedro Pascal, great actor, everyone loves him. I'll take it. I would have absolutely been disappointed if you would have made Reed Richards someone of a more blatant, obvious, different ethnicity. And that'd be the same for all the characters. I had an issue with the 2015 version of Fantastic Four having Michael B. Jordan, an actor that I think is great, but he weren't Johnny Storm. But let me backtrack. Let me give you my brief feeling about the film so far that we've gotten. So we had the 1994-1995 Fantastic Four movie that nobody has seen. I remember being a teenager in school, I think in the States you call it high school, and reading magazines and looking at exclusive sneak peeks at this Fantastic Four movie. It was directed by Roger Corman on a shoestring budget, but those images of Mr. Fantastic stretching, obviously a physical, practical prop as an arm. The first image of the Thing with some latex kind of bodysuit that makes the 2005 version look like Oscar-level special effects. And just feeling, wow, my beloved characters are going to be in a movie. At that time, there was no comic book movie craze. I mean, think about it, 1994. The only comic book movies that had really had any success were DC, Batman, and even then we were on Batman Forever, which wasn't the worst of the old Batman movies, but it was getting there. Joel Schumacher's debut. But we'd never had a Marvel movie that we had any enjoyment. I think we didn't even have a Marvel movie because when you think of Blade, that didn't come out until the late 90s. So there was hope. So this Fantastic Four movie really looked like it was going to happen until it didn't. Well, it happened, but it didn't get released. But the images made me feel all sorts of excitement. And there is bootleg copies of it. I haven't seen a bootleg. I know that the Star Wars Holiday Special was the other holy grail of film material from a very big franchise, which everyone had spoke about, heard whispers of, and there was apparently copies of VHS passed around conventions. I remember finding out about that in the mid-90s. There's a Star Wars TV special. I've seen clips of the Roger Corman Fantastic Four movie, and boy, am I glad it was never released. But then fast forward to 2005, the Fox movies, I remember when there was first word that there was going to be a Fantastic Four movie, a new attempt that would actually be released this time. I remember the announcements, the castings, looking at websites like Ain't It Cool News, following all the reports. Fox knocked it out of the park with X-Men and X2, so I thought, well, they can do a good job of the Fantastic Four. Remember, the MCU was not even a twinkle in anyone's eye. Those movies came out, the first film came out. There were compromises, sure. Julian McMahon showing up as Doom at the very end, him being on the mission into space was problematic, but hey, a lot of the whispers of what was going on potentially in original scripts, it worked out okay in the actual finished product. And I remember being like excited about the next chapter of Fantastic Four because I think they nailed most of the characters. Chris Evans as Johnny Storm was hilarious. He was great. His banter with Michael Chiklis as the Thing was a lot of fun. Johan Griffith as Mr. Fantastic. They tried, and I like the fact that he was obviously the scientist, but he was very cliche. I'm a dork, I'm a geek, which wasn't classic Reed, but anyway. Jessica Alba as Sue Storm. The worry was she was just there for eye candy, but I think she really tried in that film. You saw her being maternal with Johnny. She brought out that side of Sue, being quite strong and feisty, but they were trying to do the whole strong woman thing by bumping her up to be a co-scientist with Reed and being in the love triangle with her and Victor. But then came Fantastic Four, the sequel. And I think in some ways it was a better movie in terms of the visual effects, the use of Doctor Doom. They went classic Doom with his full armor there. And I got to interview Tim Story for that movie in the junket. And I think when you're on these junkets and you're interviewing a director, of course, you're charmed and you see things more positively than what they really are. You get swept into the excitement of, I was on the blue carpet because it was Fantastic Four blue, get it? And it was great to see the Silver Surfer. That's a character that a long time we've waited to see on the silver screen. Silver screen, Silver Surfer. But even at the time, a little bit like the Star Wars prequels, as a fan, I knew deep down these were not the movies that I really wanted and were not really that good. I think they could have been worse. The Fantastic Four movies were quite faithful to the source material, but in comparison to what was to come in 2015, those movies were like straight off the page. There was rumblings even before the Josh Trank version of Fantastic Four that they were going to reboot the franchise. My hope at the time was that Marvel would hurry up and get the rights back before Fox made a new one. I didn't trust Fox. When you think of the history of Fox with its former head, Tim Rothman, who oversaw the X-Men franchise, and I blame him for the train wreck that was X-Men 3, The Last Stand, by the way. He was handcuffing the project. Fox didn't want to lose one of their major comic book franchises, which was the Fantastic Four or the X-Men. So their thing was to kind of hold on to the properties. If they kept on making the movies according to their contract, they had full custody. So I feel they rushed out another Fantastic Four movie just in time before they lost the rights back to Marvel, which was already crushing it with its Captain America movies, its Iron Man movies, its Avenger team movie. And I remember thinking, imagine what the MCU could do with a Fantastic Four. But the characters are lame, they're boring, they're old-fashioned, they're old hat. The movies are rubbish. Yes, so you could say that with the Spider-Man movies. I think from Spider-Man 3, Sam Raimi's movie, to the Amazing Spider-Man movies, I loved Andrew Garfield, didn't love his Spider-Man movies. I felt they got worse and worse. But look what they did with Spider-Man in Civil War. They gave that character a complete reboot, a retool, and an injection, and suddenly everyone loved Spider-Man on screen again. I was convinced that would be the same with the Fantastic Four. But then we had the Josh Trank movie that was trying to go for some kind of deep body horror kind of thing. That was a very Frankenstein movie. You had the areas of it where it was trying to be very mature and adult and deep and dark and broody. That is not the FF. It's not X-Men. It's not anywhere. It's the opposite of dark. It's like bright, primary colors, child-friendly. Have you seen The Incredibles? That's the Fantastic Four. So why they felt to go down the dark and gritty route, I don't know. And then, of course, Simon Kinberg, the producer, apparently stepped in when they fired Josh Trank. And I think you can see where he then tried to massage the movie into more of the traditional comic book stuff by the end, even having them have this cringy thing of coming up with their name, and it just didn't work. You're either going to go one direction or the other. Don't go in one direction and do a 380. Just doesn't work. I didn't like the cast. They were too young. I didn't want Fantastic Four babies. I wanted the family dynamic. How can Reed be the dad of the team, even without Franklin and Valencia, when he's the same age as Johnny? It makes no sense. The whole point of the FF is a family dynamic. Reed like the father, Sue like the mother, Johnny like the son, and Ben like the uncle, the grumpy uncle. So their dynamic doesn't work between Ben and Johnny, which is one of the massive dynamics of the Fantastic Four. Plus, when I knew that they were casting Michael B. Jordan because he was in Josh Tranks' movie Chronicle, which is a great movie, by the way, but evidence that he was the wrong guy for the job, because Chronicle is, imagine if superheroes were real and it really happened to a group of people and the kind of how that would play out. Great for that movie. You don't want gritty realism when it comes to a guy who can stretch, a guy who turns on fire, a guy who turns to rocks, and a woman is invisible. It's not that kind of party. So I wasn't surprised that it was a mismatch. But he was insistent on casting Michael B. Jordan, his mate, who's a great actor, but was no Johnny Storm. And I can imagine if you're a white fan and you said that, that's racist. You're a racist. You don't like black people. Probably the same way with the Ghostbusters 2016 remake with the all ladies. You're a sexist. You hate women. I couldn't stand that first trailer, mainly because for years people who were fans of Ghostbusters were waiting for a Ghostbusters 3. Then suddenly they went in a different direction and didn't really respect the source material. But anyway, that's another issue. But you get my point. It was very easy for film studios who realize they're losing their fans on the property to turn around and blame them for hating on the project, to almost excuse themselves for making something that's not going to be received very well. So I was delighted when Disney bought Fox. Sorry for those who lost their jobs, of course, in 20th Century Fox. And obviously a little bit worried that one company, the mouse, ruled them all. One ring to rule them all. A little bit concerned of the power Disney having all the franchises, all the studios, a bit like Thanos having all the rings. Oh, the power. Snap. But the main point really with Disney, the excitement with Disney buying out, having the Fantastic Four and the X-Men again on its roster, is that they were the A-list characters of Marvel, without a question. If they could make wonders with the B-list characters like Iron Man and the Avengers, Hulk, etc., imagine what they could do with the creme de la creme, the X-Men, and I'd put the FF on par with that, the OGs. Now, some of that discussion about the casting for these movies went down the road of, oh, we better not have an all-white cast again. And I was like, here we go again. Forgive me, but I'm a bit of a purist. I know some changes here and there, like Nick Fury didn't look like Sam Jackson, even though there is precedent for that change because there was the comics that made Nick Fury look like Samuel Jackson long before the movie came out. So that's not exactly the same equivalent. I like my characters to be as faithful to their depiction in the source material as possible. Even little things like costumes and whether a character is in the right color scheme. I can forgive changes if the end product knocks it out of the park. I remember as a fan of the X-Men on Ain't It Cool News when they first leaked that they would be wearing Matrix type black leather costumes. And I was mortified. I was like, that ain't the X-Men. Did it make me hate the movie when it came out? No. But would I have preferred it to be faithful? Yes. I understand why they made the change, because at that point it would look ridiculous having color spandex. But by the time the MCU got in its stride, they understood how to balance comic faithful, accurate costumes with real world materials and look. So win-win. So when the conversation about casting these A-list properties starts to go down the line of race swapping and changes, it kind of got me sad again, because I kind of felt, oh, they're going to do it, aren't they? They can't just have faithful adaptation. And personally, I don't think they've had 100% faithful adaptation, at least not one that's been good, of these characters. That they're a family, you have to change it to meet the times and meet the diversity quota. And to me, that's just the wrong attitude for creating or for adapting a project. Make it like what people fell in love with. You can, unless you're hearing this and not seeing it, I'm a black man. I love the Fantastic Four and they were white. Do I need them to look like me in order to enjoy them on the big screen? No. Did I need to do that with the Avengers? No. Did the Avengers make a gazillion dollars? Yes. Am I elated that they finally brought the Black Panther to screen? Absolutely. Will it be great to see Bishop and Storm and other black characters from Marvel Comics be brought into the universe on screen? Absolutely. Do that. Don't be like, oh, let's just swap out the character and swap their ethnicity and their gender, because all that does is just upset hardcore fans, and then you turn around and call them racist or misogynist because they just wanted to see what they grew up with on screen. So don't hate your fans, Disney, because they like tradition. So there's that. When you cut and paste race, what that says is that it doesn't matter the details of the character, but someone will say, but has whiteness got anything to do with Mr. Fantastic's intelligence, his background? No, but it looks like they're setting it in the 60s. Realistically, could there be a super intelligent genius black scientist in 1963? Of course, absolutely. Have you seen Hidden Figures? But would that not bring the issue of equality and racial politics into what should be a straightforward story? Reed and Sue, if Sue is white and it's an interracial relationship, doesn't that become a subtextual thing rather than just that's Reed, that's Sue? Now, I think to be ignorant about race is to be like, we're all the same. Yes and no. We're all human beings. We're all people. But our backgrounds and our stories nuance how we approach things. For example, Idris Elba as James Bond. A terrible, terrible idea. Is he a great actor? Yes. Does he have sex appeal? Oodles it. He oozes it. Is he a handsome man? Absolutely. Is he suave and sophisticated? All of the above. However, James Bond really is not entirely the good guy. Whoa, wait there. As written by Ian Fleming, he's a bit of a sociopath. And he's also part of the empire. I'm British, and I love the country that I've grown up in, and it's my nation. But it's got a bit of a past. And the subtext of that is he's on Her Majesty's Secret Service. He was an assassin doing some shady stuff, depending on what perspective you look at it. There's more subtext to the character, and having a black actor play that, I think, brings some things that almost go against the woke bandwagon. So it's almost a weird contradiction. But that's just me. So But it also goes back to the other argument. If people are trying to say that it doesn't matter what the ethnicity of the character is, it doesn't matter the race of the character, then why would it matter if it was an all-white Fantastic Four? In a weird way, it kind of is, except for technically Pedro Pascal as Latin heritage, but it's almost like a kind of a technical default thing. It's a technicality, because ultimately optics, and I'm happy about this, by the way, they're all look ethnically the same. So well done, Marvel, Disney, if you wanted to tick a box and say, look, we've been progressive. But it just makes a bit of a mockery about it when you've actually done something that you could have just done anyway and said, we've got a traditional looking Fantastic Four. Now, my biggest issue with that is the point of pleasing people. When you're trying to please people over art and creativity, yes, you want to make something for fans and you want to please as many people in general as possible. But when you're desperately trying to please interest groups, you ain't going to win. You're really not. Because already there's a backlash that Pedro is not quite ethnic enough. And it's still a safe casting. For me, that's great. I wanted a safe casting. If that means faithful to the material, I wanted that. But you're going to have people upset. Personally, some of the fan casting has been atrocious. People wanting the obvious actors for roles, and the same people that would have never had Heath Ledger as the Joker, would never have had Robert Pattinson as Bruce Wayne, and we would have lost out of some of the greatest castings. Even Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man, I don't think he was on anybody's list of who could play him. Remember, Tom Cruise was on that list. And now we're like, the MCU is doomed. There's no Robert Downey Jr. So fan casting usually sucks. I remember in Wizard magazine, a comic book magazine that used to have stuff about fantasy casting for comic book movies, their X-Men one was atrocious. The only one that was decent is they had Sir Patrick Stewart's Professor X, and that worked out actually in the casting process. So yeah, I'm very happy with the Fantastic Four cast because it could have been worse. We'll see how it works out. I'm personally happy, and I've never been so excited about the potential of a Fantastic Four movie since 1994, when I saw those first images of a very low budget, very wonky, seemingly faithful Roger Corman adaptation. That never saw the light of day. I wish the other three kind of never saw the light of day. But fourth time lucky? Maybe, maybe we might just get the perfect page-to-screen Fantastic Four, and they need it because they need to save the MCU from being irrelevant and take it to the next chapter. Calling X-Men, the FF and the X-Men, maybe we'll see a whole new era of the MCU with their A-list talent off the backbench, on the pitch. Let's see, let's go. Woo! Enough this jib jabbering. See you in the next video.